In this video, we're going to install the front catalytic converter in this 2012 Mitsubishi Outlander. You can find it on the front of your motor. So because we're working with the electronics and the O2 sensors, we're going to go ahead and disconnect the negative terminal on our battery. The 10mm wrench, and loosen that up. Wiggle that off and just set it aside. We're going to go ahead and move forward in front of the flex pipe, and we're going to try and break these two bolts free. These are at the bottom of our front catalytic converter. If they don't break free, we're going to put some heat on them. 18mm socket. Remove our front O2 sensor on the bottom, which would be your downstream. It's going to be a 22mm O2 sensor socket. So we will put that on now and break this free. These usually don't break free easily enough. We applied some heat, so ours will break free. Just remember that if it doesn't break free, try a little heat on there, some penetrating spray. It should work free. All right, now you don't necessarily need to take the O2 sensor all the way out. It will come out with the cat. We're just loosening it up while we have the catalytic converter held in place, almost using it as a vise. We're going to remove our air intake. We're going to start back here with these two push pins, the panel tool. Push the centers of the pins out, pull the clips out. And we're going to follow this back to our air cleaner, air box assembly, and push these two clips away. And at this point, we can remove and just pull up and rotate out our front air intake assembly. We'll put one hand and grab the filter. I don't want to fall. Rotate that out. Take the filter out with it. So our catalytic converter is straight down here. What we're going to do is take this whole upper radiator hose assembly and hoses off of the fan assembly so we can move it forward without draining our radiator. So with a 12mm socket, there'll be one bolt behind here. I'll take that out now. Now here, we can take our hose and push it straight back out of this clip. And our overflow hose, the same, we can push it straight back and out of the clip here. And then one more behind that. Okay, now that those two are free, take your radiator hose assembly, lift straight up. Now what you've done is removed it from the fan assembly. What we're going to try and do is tie this forward. You can use a rubber strap, elastic strap, whatever you can to tie this and keep it forward and away. So now you have access here. So we're going to remove our fan assembly. It'll give us much more clearance to work in here. First things first is you want to remove your electrical harness. Just want to remove that straight out of these clips. Just grab, pull backwards. We have a couple of electrical connectors that we'll address now. We're going to use a pick tool if we need to. Just push the tabs, separate the plugs. Now you have two clips on both sides of the radiator. The fan assembly has a tab that sits into the clip. We're going to pry these clips open with a flathead screwdriver. There's a top and a bottom. So the top clip, we're going to push this tab in and pull up slightly. Now the bottom is still locked in place. We'll go ahead and do the same on the bottom. Just push that tab in. What I'm going to do is actually put my screwdriver, my flathead screwdriver, in between the tab and the fan assembly. Like so. And I'm going to press the top tab back by hand and pull up. And you're going to do the same on the passenger side. We are going to try and work it out through the driver's side at an angle. You're going to be very careful. Even though your battery's disconnected, be very careful of your ABS sensors here, the yellow plugs. So while we're working carefully around them, let's see if we can get the fan assembly up and out. You also want to be very careful not to damage the fins on your radiator. Just slowly, carefully. Like so. So now that we have more access to work in here, we're going to take out this O2 sensor and remove it from these two clips. Just pull the clip open, pull your harness out. And since we've already undone our bottom, we'll do the same. Just free up the cable. Now while we're here, before we start undoing this sensor, because as we turn it, the cable will twist. Let's go ahead and disconnect the electrical connector. Press the tab, separate the plug. You just want to check for any corrosion. Everything looks pretty good on that one. And right next to it, hidden behind there, is the gray for your downstream. Disconnect that plug as well. All right, so we are going to remove our front O2 sensor with our 22 millimeter O2 sensor socket. I'm just going to hold the cable up and out of the way for now. All right. So now we'll remove our heat shield. We have 3 12 millimeter bolts holding the heat shield on. That will also be covering our access to the 4 manifold bolts. So let's get this heat shield off. In our vehicle, the heat shield just rusted right through the last bolt. So now that we have access to our manifold, we can see our 4 bolts, 2 of which in the middle are studs. They're 14 millimeter studs. And on the sides, on the outer sides, they're 14 millimeter bolts. We're going to go ahead and remove the 2 nuts on the inside studs here. I'm going to use a 14 millimeter swivel socket. It will allow us a little more clearance. In this case, when we went to back out our nut, our entire stud came out of the block. Not a horrible problem. We can work with that still. We'll just reinstall it back into the block. Now that you have your bolt out, you can lift your catalytic converter straight out the top. So our oxygen sensor plug is right here, and it's on a metal clip or a metal bracket. We're going to now remove it from the bracket so we can take that whole harness right out. So we're going to get behind it with a pick tool. We're going to get between the clip and the plug, pry out, and pull up. There's a bracket holding your front catalytic converter to the motor. You should be able to take this bolt off here from the bracket itself. It's a 14mm bolt. Now on our car, the 14mm bolt was stripped, and the bracket bolt holding to the motor was completely missing. So we're going to take the catalytic converter out with this bracket and try and remove the bolt from here. And we will also remove the metal manifold gasket, and we'll be replacing that with the new ones that come with our catalytic converter. So out of the vehicle, we're going to put a little anti-seize on these O2 sensor threads, and then we'll thread them into the catalytic converter. Now in this front catalytic converter, we do have access to both the top and bottom O2 sensor while they're in the vehicle. So we won't tighten them all the way down. So what we're going to do now is install the new catalytic converter. We're going to put it in through the bottom of the vehicle. Again, taking care of not hitting our radiator. Hang it on the studs up top. All right, and before we put our new catalytic converter back in, make sure we put on our new gasket. You also want to, while you're here, make sure that the surface is free and clear of any debris. Where you're using a metal gasket, there shouldn't be much, but just go ahead and give it a look. So put your new exhaust gasket on. In our case, one of the studs came out with the nut. So instead of our exhaust gasket sitting flush and flat where we need it to be, it's laying down. So we're going to have to make sure we get it up into the right place. What we're going to do now is move our catalytic converter in place. We're going to hang it on the one stud, and we'll thread finger tight one of the nuts onto that stud. Just to hold this in place while we work. Now what we'll do is if you reach around to the side, you can feel your manifold gasket. We're going to try and pull that up into place and put the other stud in. What I'm going to do here is also use a mirror. All right, now that we have our nut on our top stud and our bottom stud started to thread in, we'll go ahead and start our outside two bolts in. Now that we have our manifold bolts in place, we're going to torque them down to 36 foot-pounds. Now we're going to tighten down our O2 sensors. They're going to be 35 foot-pounds. We'll get them snugged up first. Do the top one first. Now we're going to install our heat shield. I'll feed your O2 cable through. And before we do that, I just want to make note that our heat shield, this is rotted away, so we do not have a third point of contact here. If yours is this way, you should put a replacement piece on. Okay, and now we can run our O2 sensor cable into the first clip. Push that clip closed. And into the second clip, where we will also add in our bottom or downstream O2 sensor. And push the clip closed, like so. And then we'll run them up and join them to these two plugs here after we put them back on their brackets. Now that that's on the bracket, we can go ahead and connect our electrical connectors. Okay, so now that we have our top O2 sensor tightened down, cables run, everything's tightened back down as far as the catalytic converter, we can now go ahead and reinstall our fan assembly. We're going to install our fan assembly the same way it came out. Drop the passenger side in. Okay, now that you have it somewhat in place, we're going to go ahead and line it up with our clips, top and bottom. I'll hold it generally in place. And we're going to try and aim for the bottom clips in first. On both sides, get your bottom clips lined up. Okay. With your bottom clips lined up, you should be able to push down and pull back at the same time, seating it into the top clips. So our top clip on the driver's side did not clip in. So we're going to remove the driver's side bottom clip by pressing in and pulling up. We can realign our driver's side clip. And it's locked in place. Now we can reattach our electrical harness to the fan assembly. So we'll pull our harness back over. And what we'll do is we'll connect our electrical connectors first. Just line them up, push them together till they click. Now what we can do is seat the harness into the fan assembly just by pushing and clicking in place. There's two spots for that. There's one clip on the driver's side of the fan assembly. Go ahead and put that back. Now what we can do is put our upper radiator hose back in place so we can release our elastic support. Now this assembly will sit up and into the plastic groove like so. And now we can put our bolt back in the front. That's a 12mm bolt. We'll reinstall that. Now we can reattach our radiator hose into the clip on the driver's side. Just push into the clip. So now we can reattach our overflow tube. There's 2 points where that clicks into. It's directly underneath your ABS sensor. Here's your first point. Just push that into the clip. The second point is underneath this warning sticker. Just go ahead and press that into the clip. All right, now you can reinstall your air filter and air intake. It's going to slide down and into the front and rotate downwards. There will be 2 tabs on the bottom of the intake box that you'll have to slide into 2 grooves, as well as this tab here that will slide into the side. So first things first, just getting your front aligned. And we can drop the back 2 tabs into place. With it sitting just like this, we'll go ahead and slide our air filter in place. And we will close our air box. Now up front, we have 2 plastic clips, push pin clips that we'll put back in. All right, now we're going to torque down our downstream bottom O2 sensor on the front cat. So we'll do that with a 22mm oxygen sensor socket. Place that in place. And we're going to torque that down to 35 foot-pounds. So now what we're going to do is install our flange studs onto our new catalytic converter. There's a short and a long side. The short side's going to go into the catalytic converter up until the knurled portion. So just thread those in as far as you can get them. Sometimes they're a little tough. Now while we're here, what we can do is put on our gasket. So our gasket's just a little bent, which is making it tough to go on. If you want to straighten that out before you put it on, it might help a little. Just do not deform these ribs. The nuts that you receive with this kit will only thread on by hand so far to a locking point. So we're going to thread them to that locking point, and then we'll tighten them down. All right, and now with the 17mm socket, we'll go ahead and tighten those down. We're going to snug it up, work to the other side, and work back and forth. And now that our electrical connections are back in, air box is back in, we can go ahead and connect the negative terminal on our battery. Go ahead and slide that on with a 10mm wrench. go ahead and tighten that down.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.